You are the bastard, though.
The bastard of Winterfell.
What's my name?
Jon Snow?
And why is my surname Snow?
Because you're a bastard from the north.
Have you ever wondered what Jon Snow's life would be like in the future? After Game of Thrones ended, HBO started working on new shows set in the same world. One of these could be a sequel focusing on Jon Snow, played by Kit Harington. He actually pitched this idea to HBO himself. Now, the creators of Game of Thrones, David Benioff and Davey Wise, have shared a fun idea for the sequel. They imagine an older Jon Snow, with Kit Harington sporting a grey beard going on one last ride. While this seems more like a playful suggestion from them, it does raise an interesting possibility. Unlike other spin-offs that explore the past, this one would move the story forward. After the main series, Jon's story seemed to reach a satisfying conclusion. He helped defeat the White Walkers, and Bran Stark became king. But what if we jump ahead in time to see an older Jon facing new challenges? This could provide a fresh start and new adventures for the beloved character. Continuing Jon Snow's story decades later opens up a world of possibilities. The landscape of Westeros could have changed dramatically, with new threats and rivalries emerging. This would provide a more organic way to introduce challenges for Jon to face. By setting the sequel far in the future, it also allows for some distance from the controversial ending of Game of Thrones. This ensures that the new show feels fresh and unique, rather than simply an extension of the old one. Any returning characters would have had longer to develop, making their reunions with Jon more emotional. It would also be fitting for Jon's character to have one last ride. After all he's been through, he deserves some peace. But if he were called back into action, it would be a fitting conclusion to his story. Imagine an older Jon, inspired by the leaders who shaped him, leading the Wildlings and Night's Watch in a final battle against a new threat. It would be a compelling and satisfying arc for the character. An older Jon Snow sequel is probably not going to happen for several reasons. One major challenge would be aging up Kit Harington enough to convincingly play an elderly Jon, or potentially recasting the role altogether. Additionally, it's impossible to predict what TV shows will be popular decades from now. Furthermore, David Benioff and D.B. Weiss, the creators of Game of Thrones, are unlikely to be involved in any future projects related to the series. They chose not to take credit for House of the Dragon, the only spin-off that has been produced so far, as they were not directly involved in its creation. Benioff and Weiss have moved on to other projects, such as Netflix's Three-Body Problem, and have shown no interest in returning to the world of Westeros. Additionally, due to the backlash they faced over the final season of Game of Thrones, it's possible that the fans of the show may not be eager to see them return to the franchise either. Kit Harington has been actively involved in developing the Jon Snow sequel, bringing in a team of writers to work on the project. While he may seek advice from David Benioff and D.B. Weiss, it's unlikely that they will have any direct involvement in the show beyond that. The direction of the sequel is still uncertain, but Benioff and Weiss will not make it, and it may not focus on an older Jon Snow as previously speculated. Benioff humorously noted the challenge of Kit Harington, who played Jon Snow, carrying the character's heavy cloak if the sequel were set many years later. Weiss joked about waiting until they're all much older, suggesting a scenario where Harington could reprise the role with a grey beard for one last ride, referencing the film sequel, The Color of Money. The delays in developing the Jon Snow spin-off could be due to several factors. One major reason could be the current focus on the prequel series House of the Dragon, which is already airing. Additionally, the Dunk and Egg spin-off, A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, The Hedge Knight, has been ordered into a series. If HBO were to introduce more Game of Thrones spin-offs simultaneously, it could lead to oversaturation of the market. This could potentially devalue the other entries in the franchise and make it challenging to justify their high production budgets. The development of the Jon Snow spin-off also hinges on Kit Harington's availability. The actor, now 37 years old, has been busy with various projects since the conclusion of Game of Thrones. One of his notable roles was in the 2021 Marvel Cinematic Universe film Eternals. And while it's uncertain if his character will return in future MCU films, the post-credits scene of Eternals hinted at his potential involvement in the upcoming movie Blade, possibly taking on the role of Black Knight.
17 years ago, you rode off with Robert Baratheon.
Your Aunt Lyanna.
Father never talked about her.
You came back a year later with another woman's son.
What was she like?
You want to know the horrible truth?
The first season of MGM Plus's adaptation of The Winter King has sparked discussions about the characters and storylines that were left out, including Arthur's final battle with King Gorfit and Powys, Durfel's adventures in France, and the omission of Galahad and Lancelot. In Cornwell's novels, Lancelot has a significant role, especially in later books where he takes on a more villainous persona. If the Winter King stays faithful to Bernard Cornwell's novels, Lancelot's character must appear in the second season. Described as vain, arrogant, and somewhat cowardly in the books, Lancelot's introduction would need to be impactful and offer an opportunity from the series to bring in some star power. Given the frequent comparisons to Game of Thrones, casting Kit Harington as Lancelot could be a brilliant move, adding to the show's allure and drawing in fans who appreciate his work on Game of Thrones. Kit Harington's Jon Snow in Game of Thrones was known for his purity of heart, virtue, and self-sacrifice, making him the show's central character. Despite facing death, Jon always strove to do what was right and save the day. Similarly, Arthur in The Winter King, played by Ian de Kesteker, shares similarities with Jon, both being bastards and somewhat outcasts, although Jon had a more nurturing father figure in Ned Stark compared to Arthur. The Winter King has yet to be renewed for a second season, but if it does return, it will likely need to expand its scale and scope, especially to depict the looming war facing Arthur and Dumnonia. The first season was criticized for feeling too confined and lacking in action, so a larger focus on the war and its consequences could be essential for the series to succeed in future seasons. Think about this. After the epic events of Game of Thrones, Jon Snow finds himself back at Castle Black, facing a new chapter in his life, but this time he's not alone. His loyal wildling friend, Tormund Giantsbane, is by his side, along with his fierce direwolf Ghost. As Jon grapples with his Targaryen heritage and the consequences of his actions, a new adventure begins. HBO is reportedly working on a spin-off that will continue Jon Snow's story, with Kit Harington reprising his iconic role. The sequel will be a first for Game of Thrones universe, diving deeper into Jon's journey after the show's dramatic conclusion. With the return of Tormund and Ghost, fans can expect more of the camaraderie and loyalty that define Jon's character. And as Jon faces new challenges and explores his Targaryen legacy, the stage is set for an epic adventure that will captivate audiences once again. As Game of Thrones came to a close, Jon Snow, Tormund Giantsbane, Ghost, and a group of wildlings rode off into the north. Should the spin-off series be greenlit, it's essential that Jon's loyal companions, Ghost and Tormund, remain by his side for their adventures. Kit Harington recently spoke about the finale at a Game of Thrones convention, describing Jon's exile as both a gift and a curse. He's gotta go back up to the place with all this history and live out his life thinking about how he killed Dany, and live out his life thinking about Ygritte dying in his arms, and live out his life thinking about how he hung Ollie, and live out his life about thinking about all of the trauma and death. Harington acknowledged the depth of Jon's tragedy, highlighting the weight of his past actions and losses. Jon's bond with Tormund, initially forged through circumstance, has evolved into a deep and meaningful friendship, especially as they face numerous challenges together. Tormund's connection to the Free Folk, the same tribe as Jon's first love, Ygritte, adds a poignant layer to their relationship and sets a strong foundation for the spin-off's narrative. Who else do you wish to see alongside Jon Snow? Let us know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and until next time.